It's Spoilerin time, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're looking at the video version, you may think, Tom, where are you? I'm at Allison Sheridan's house. She very nicely donated some bandwidth and some space at her desk to let me record both Cordkillers and this show today. So huge thanks to Allison at podfeet.com. Our show today is going to spoil Justified, Episode 3, Season 2, House of Cards, the latter half of Season 4, and Game of Thrones, last night's episode, Episode 2 of Season 6. But I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood. Who's the other Brian? Brian?
It's Brian Ibbott of Coverville fame. How are you, sir?
Good, man. Thanks for letting me sit here and gab about TV.
Yeah, dude, we'll get ready to be actually spoiled at parts of it. But first, we're going to spoil the standings on the Summer Movie Draft. It's live or die, man. This is the week. This is the week.
Keanu.
No,
making $9 million.
Not what I'm thinking. It did $9 million?
Yeah, it's actually not that bad. I only paid $6 for it.
That's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
That's
not as bad as Mother's Day, which only made $8 million.
Oh, Tom, I didn't realize you had such a rough weekend.
What?
No, Chainsaw Suit had Mother's Day. You had Huntsman, Winter's War, which
is up to $34 million. I'm more disappointed about Huntsman than Keanu.
Yeah, dude. Okay, so you've spent a total of $18 so far. Now, granted, you're in second place.
Here's the thing: all the money that wasn't going to Huntsman and Keanu went to Jungle Book, which is a $253 million.
That's right. Yeah, that is correct. So you're in good shape. So you've at this point.
I'm not despairing. I'm not despairing. I
didn't
expect Keanu to give me anything. I definitely wish the Huntsman would have done better.
You're actually in pretty good shape. You spent about a third of your money, and you're creeping up on $300 million, which is sort of you're on track for. The winner tends to do about $1 billion. Chainsaw Suit, I'm going to say, is pretty much, even though Mother's Day took a giant dump, they've spent about a third of their money.
Yeah, I don't think they expected anything on a Mother's Day.
Yeah, and they're at about a third. Night Attack, unfortunately, has spent a third of their money. And has
but you got your boy.
Yeah.
Cap's
you guys
coming
got
out
Captain
this
America
weekend.
coming.
Yeah, it's do or die. It's if Captain America doesn't make at least $500 million, we are in deep trouble.
It will.
You think?
I do. Ibbott, what do you lay odds? What do you think Captain America: Civil War is going to do? I just feel like
right around there. Like I was thinking somewhere right around 500 million. So
I think it's the Avengers movie people wanted last time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think so. And everybody's going to be curious about seeing Spider-Man. Everybody's going to be interested in the whole continuation of the Winter Soldier storyline. I think it's going to do big, and I think it's going to probably do better than the Avengers sequel.
Well, we need it to. So I guess really we'll just check in and see where we're at next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to our triage, which is a little bit of the feedback that we get from you folks, starting with someone who wrote in and said, "Boss lady here. Just thought you'd enjoy knowing that. I'm part of the legion of listeners watching Justified along with you, despite having an unholy amount of TV waiting on my DVR. I sucked in my roommate. We are now both addicted to the show," meaning spoiler time. "At this point, we respond with Pavlovian joy to your ridiculous theme song, and I explained that must be Justified."
Yeah. Which, by the way, I wanted to check in with our resident musician experts here. Does Justified's intro, is that a ridiculous song? It doesn't seem any more ridiculous than the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt song.
Right. No, I love the theme to Justified. Gangsta Grass, man. It's awesome.
Gangsta Grass, yeah. Bryce, do you have a vibe on this?
I don't know the Justified theme song.
Yeah, just see if you can cue it up while we read the rest of the letter here.
Anyway, she says they respond with Pavlovian joy to the theme song, and then said, "I explained number one to my roommate that she watches Spoilerin Time, and she has now subscribed to the It's Spoilerin Time feed expressly to listen to y'all jam about Justified. I have to say it is super odd to hear you guys speak at 1x rather than 1.5x. Keep up the great work. Can't wait to watch the rest of the seasons with you."
All right, listen. Tell you, is this song ridiculous?
Not at all.
It's a little ridiculous. Yeah, all right. Maybe it is ridiculous.
I love it. I don't care if it's ridiculous. I sing along every time.
Perfect combination of like that kind of backwoods banjo guitar kid rocking the rocking chair in Deliverance kind of feel mixed with the rap stuff. I love it. I give it
All
I give it an
right.
88.
Lonely hard times.
Co-executive producer Ed chimes in.
Hold on.
Oh.
Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
What?
but this email contains Game of Thrones spoilers. So let's just go ahead. I know we're still in triage, but we should, Bryce, put that Game of Thrones spoiler up there. Okay, here we go.
Good call, good call. Co-executive producer Ed here, and I just want to make sure you guys know what a great job you're doing with Spoilerin time. I get excited to watch it every week, and as part of my it's part of my impetus to stay caught up on shows.
Gotta keep your impetus healthy.
But it also is a curse. You guys don't watch an entire Netflix series, Narcos, for instance. For the record, I finished that one. It was Tom that did not.
Me that still needs to finish.
That's right. I feel less inclined to watch it, but maybe I'll need to not be beholden to my employees' whims. And also, we're finally getting caught up with House of Cards. 2 small corrections on Game of Thrones. Arya's blindness was, in fact, a punishment in the books. She was punished for killing someone she wasn't supposed to. Book spoiler. In the book, it was Darion, Night's Watch deserter. Yes, now that you say that, you're 100% right. However, but I also feel like it was definitely part of the lessons, but then that seems to be how they're folding it into the TV show as well. The other one is less of a correction and more of a tidbit. Melisandre has had exposure to the reviving powers of her faith in the show, unlike the books. In the show, she meets up with the Brotherhood Without Banners to obtain Gendry, who's still out there rowing somewhere. And so she sees Beric Dondarrion, and Thoros tells her about reviving him, and he gives a link. So while I agree she's probably having a crisis of faith, she doesn't need to reach very far to get revival magic. LSH and the Mountain aren't the only examples of it in the books or the show.
Yeah, I forgot
by the
about
way,
Beric.
but a nice use of LSH. If you know what that is, then you're in the know.
Yeah, that's good. Non-spoilery if you don't. Beric Dondarrion, right. I totally forgot. I forgot he was in the show even. So great point there. And obviously, as we saw in this episode, she comes to her crisis of faith, comes out of her crisis of faith partway at Davos' insistence and leaves the episode as a broken magician, not knowing she succeeded.
Okay, let's go in reverse order. Let's start with the ending, right? This is the ending that you could feel the shockwaves of thousands of people not being surprised at the same time.
My wife made a rookie mistake, by the way, because we started watching about a half hour after everybody else. And
she had Twitter open.
When Ramsay Bolton opens up the dog cages, she goes to Twitter to see what people are saying about it. And of course, by that time, they'd all seen the ends.
Whoopsie. Okay, so one of my favorite things about Battlestar Galactica, the reboot on the Sci-Fi Channel, was that they did essentially they did director's commentaries. Ronald D. Moore would open a whiskey and he'd talk about all the behind the scenes of each episode as they went through it, and I loved it. I would watch an episode in the evening. The next day I would go for a jog and I would relive that episode and get the director's thoughts on everything. And then they made the mistake of doing a few episodes where they just played the raw audio of what was happening in the writer's room. And it all of a sudden way cheapened the show I love so much, because you're hearing authors say stuff like, oh yeah, so then we could tie in the whole stem cell thing, and then we'll do the whole George W. Bush steals the election thing at this other part stuff, and then hearing the naked, transparent things they were actually going for really took away the magic. This was the first time, given the end of the episode, I was like, oh, you know what? I'll stick around for that. Listen to the people who make the show talk about the show thing afterwards. And sure enough, guys who make the show, you're like, oh man, and it's like Jon Snow's dead and she keeps trying her magic. Like she's got those paddles and they're like, clear, psh, clear, psh, but he's not responding. Is he dead? Is he dead? But then last minute, like every trite, cliched, crappy medical drama, he breathes at the end. And I was like, I am dumber for having watched that, and I'm disappointed. I will never watch another one of those little featurettes afterwards.
It's both ruined Game of Thrones and ER for me.
Yeah, right?
Also, Brian will not be going to hospitals.
Yeah, yes. I'm having a heart attack. They start pulling out the paddles.
I know what's going to happen
And
now.
I'm like, oh, here we go again.
Then he's going to say clear.
Okay, but that said, I did like that they all left the room and he wakes up. But I think the bigger betrayal is not the sort of like, yeah, we've seen this kind of ending before, but the sort of, they've been lying. They've been flat out lying. Like, remember there was all these theories like, oh, maybe they're saying Kit Harington isn't in this season because he really isn't in it till next season, and they're just going to string us along. No, he's apparently in it a lot. According to an interview he gave, he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm in this season quite a bit. Sorry for lying to you."
Well, I understand why they would need to do that because we live in a world where the story never ends, right? This is the reason like wrestling's more popular than ever because the match can be over and then you could continue to watch the fight over Twitter between people. And it's real because it's real people really insulting each other, oftentimes talking about real stuff. And I could see them trying to do a similar thing here. You know, where it's like, hey, man, we gotta have kayfabe all the time. No, like, oh, man, no, he's really dead because he definitely did die. It's just that he just comes back from the dead. But I agree. I felt cheated a little bit at that moment. In fact, the happiest I got was the few seconds that I thought, forgive my cursing, by the way, when I thought, mother effer, I'm not even going to curse. I thought, mother effer, they're really going to let him die. I can't believe it. What a twist. What an unbelievable twist.
Right.
And then, and I was like, oh, no, of course.
And you found out he'd been holding his breath the whole time.
He gasps, and his first words are, new Westeros record. Ah!
You thought I was dead. I fooled you.
But is there any alternative to that? Like literally last week we were just talking about the cracked art video where it's like the fake creators and they're like, he is definitely alive. No, he's effing
He's
alive.
alive as F, or
Yeah,
is he
yeah,
just
yeah.
alive?
It's like, is there a solution to that?
Well, if there was no other choice, I'm glad they got it over with this fast. Like I was just like, good. We can finally move on to something else. Because meanwhile, how much fun was it to see story elements advance and not know what's coming? Like how adorable! My heart melted when Tyrion saw dragons for the first time. He's wanted his whole life for this, and he sets a dragon free. It was amazing.
I love when I don't remember. Was it Drogon? No, Drogon's out.
Yeah.
Drogon's out. Yeah, these are the other two.
I can't remember which one it was. That after he had released the first one, the second one just kind of leans over and it's like, okay, me next.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And they do a good job of making them look. The dragon design is, I think, appropriately avian. You know, it's like they look like featherless birds, and they move. I don't know. I like what they're doing a lot.
And so much good stuff. The fall of the King of the Iron Islands off the swinging
Rickety
bridge.
bridge.
Sure.
Yeah.
From Silver Dollar
Which,
City.
by the way, I had forgotten. It was a weird and wonderful moment for us to go like, oh wait, no, this had happened.
We did
in
know
the books.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually, I know Jon Snow was going to be alive. Not because I read it. I just know, like, this story does not exist without Jon Snow coming back to life. So even like you, Brian, when they sort of tricked me, like, oh, I guess he's not coming back to life right now. Oh yeah, he is. I was shocked that Ramsay killed his dad right then. I sort of figured Ramsay was going to do it, but I didn't really expect him right at that second. And I was put on my suspicion when he said, I appreciate you saying that. I'm like, oh, this is going to lead up to the plot where he's going to kill his dad. And he's like, so here you go. Boom, done.
I mean, that's also the Ramsay we've come to know and fear, right? It's the moment they said a beautiful, healthy boy, I was just like, oh.
and yet he goes to so much more machinations to kill the wife and the baby. He like luring them into the dog pound and opening the dogs, but totally telling them to all stay, and then keep leading her along because he loves to watch the torture.
Yeah, he's not about the quickest route to the end. He likes watching them suffer a little bit.
Yeah, I think he needed the element of surprise to get his dad. He did not need it to ask a recently birthed mom and a baby to go in, and it's like Bonnie couldn't handle it. Like, just the idea of where this was headed, the tension being so thick, and of course they didn't actually show anything. Bonnie just got up and left the room and waited until I went and found her brushing her teeth to tell her that it was over.
Well, Eileen was just covering her eyes, and I'm like, they're not going to show anything. They're not going to show anything. They didn't show anything. And then she's like, all right, fine. She's like, I couldn't take the chance. What else did we miss? Oh, the wildlings taking back the Night's Watch.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. Kind of knew that was going to happen, but
they one of the more graphic images in the book is the giant whipping around the ragdoll corpse of a body, and we never really saw that in the chronological parts when it happens in the book, but man, you saw it here where they just kick in that door, they grab it and just dash the brains on the side. It was very visceral and satisfying, and to see that rage.
For an episode where they don't show the dogs taking out the woman and the baby, showing both the giant and the mountain. And his brick wall incident.
And again, this is the same magic trick that the books pulls, but of all the redemptive arcs that you would never believe possible, the fact that they can make Jaime and Cersei compelling, sympathetic characters, right?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, the scene with Tommen and Cersei is like one of the most boring scenes in this episode, and it's not boring. It's a great scene. But like this episode is so jam packed that calm, quiet scene, you're like, oh yeah, well, a mother loves a son, and then you're like, oh wait, but that's Cersei.
Yeah,
that's Cersei Lannister.
That son is going to the devil and saying, "Teach me to be bad and strong," and then she's like, "Well, here we go, kid." Do you think that they stormed? They ended that scene where there was that show of strength where all the High Sparrow, and they all came out, and there's sort of a grab and like, hey, you can't take us all. I'm not worried about it. Like, I don't remember how that scene ended. Like, it cut away, and I didn't know if they were going to march him off to a cell or not.
I think it was just getting him to stand down. Like, the Sparrow just kind of walks away from him, and Jaime doesn't do anything. And I think it was just meant to say, like, we're in charge now, not you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Grab your sword all you want, Jaime.
What do you guys think? Getting back to Ramsay Bolton, he doesn't know that Jon Snow is dead, but of course now Jon Snow isn't dead, so he's right again accidentally. He also doesn't know that the wildlings are up there. He's saying there's only a couple dozen men up there. We could take it, and they're like, you shouldn't take the Night's Watch. Oh well, I'll kill you, Dad. Now I'll do what I want. Is he gonna march north and just like basically get obliterated, and then the Night's Watch leads the wildlings south under Jon Snow's command? Now that he's like, I'm dead, I don't have to follow the Night's Watch rules anymore.
Keep in mind, the story of the North at this point, especially now that the politics have been resolved, is the North, the true Northmen, the wildlings hold the wall against the undead marching down upon them. But separate from all of that, can I just say what a international treasure Max von Sydow is, and how he was able to make Bran's triumphant return utterly fascinating as he's traveling through time and space, and you realize that without the use of his legs, he's an even more interesting, more powerful character. Loved it. Loved all of that.
Great way to distract me from the fact that Bran is like 6 years older than he was in the first episode.
Well, the tree has some magical effects too. So
yeah, exactly. And we're seeing him in an imaginary world, one would assume, like that he's seeing real events, but he's not actually there. But they like to, I like the way they played with that. And I expected him to give the plans to Luke Skywalker to Bran at any moment.
He's like, where are you, Bran? He's like, I'm watching other movies now. This is an amazing gift I have.
You're in it. You're with a small round droid, apparently.
Whoa, you're Ming the Merciless. Crazy.
This is it was the Bran bit alone, the most lore of the past that we've seen through this entire series. And I was just internally like, oh yeah, that's the Targaryen lady. That we don't know that, but we think that she married a Targaryen and gave birth to Jon Snow. And I don't know. There's all kinds of crazy.
Well, I'll tell you what, they do a fantastic job of taking us along for the ride. Oh, it was great to see Jake and Hagar again. I thought that. And
Hodor.
Young Hodor.
Yeah,
yes, right.
Young Hodor was amazing.
What you talking about, Hodor?
Right. So what happened to you, Hodor? Oh, Hodor.
Yeah. Well, and I love the fact that they don't say it. It's not like he's talking and then he suddenly gets kicked in the head by a horse. It's like, he was this and now he's this. Right?
Now he's not.
Stuff happens. Yeah. Welcome to Game of Thrones.
All right. Speaking of stuff that happens, a lot of stuff happened in the second half of House of Cards, which Brian watched this week, and you're all caught up. Mr. Ibbott, you can close your ears if you want. We understand you haven't seen it yet, but that you don't really care.
Macrame over here in the corner while you guys. I'll go for it.
I mentioned this before when we first started watching it. There's something different, something I finally put my finger on it. There's an over-the-topness to season 4 that's made me enjoy it and take much bigger leaps and be along for sillier rides than I was in season 2 or season 3. And I think it's because I finally have accepted that, it's 24. It's 24. Season 1 of 24 was the one thing, and then 24 became the crazy over-the-top comic book that it became after that. And we're now in the crazy over-the-top comic book part where we're all of a sudden we're looking at the cold calculations of people who are like, oh yeah, let's manufacture a miniature 9/11 just to get people off my back. I'm along the ride for all of it.
Well, what they've done, and maybe this is why you're perceiving it as silly, is take real events from real administrations and pack them all together. So, one president who serves for 2 terms over 8 years has maybe 3 of these things happen. And Frank Underwood has all of them from the 20th century happen. So yeah, it's pretty unrealistic. But at the same time, each individual scenario is pulled. There's an analog that is pulled from history. And I think that's fascinating about it. I do feel like it gets, I wouldn't say silly myself, but it starts to get less exciting in the second half. And it was more fun when he and Claire were fighting to me.
Oh, I disagree. I think that's why I stopped watching. I think the idea that once they came to terms with each other and they're all like, all right, here's what's going to do is I'm going to handle this part. You handle that part. You handle Bone to my wife. Okay, we're all good. Go Team Voltron. And it was, I don't know. At that point, I was really interested because
Does it bother you that they didn't use Google? Instead, they used whatever Hooli-like thing they made up?
Well, if you're going to disparage a search engine and say that they are manipulating results, to me, that's like 555.
And maybe I'm remembering it wrong. And so correct, because I know you just watched it. I didn't think the search engine was manipulating results. I thought the search engine was just saying, we have all this data legitimately, and we're sharing it with you without telling anyone, which is a privacy violation.
Right, correct. So in other words, they're committing a crime, certainly a violation of terms of service, and a crime that would, you can't say that about Google, that you can't say it about Hooli Bob or whatever. Polyhop, yeah.
Polyhop, yeah. It took me out of it when they're like, yeah, it doesn't have a very big market share, but it still has a lot of data. I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know if its data is going to be that good then.
That could be your version of the 555 prefix that drives me nuts whenever I see it.
Yeah, totally. It's exactly the same kind of thing. But you're into that intrigue, and Conway is amazing. Actually, I think that was really smart to bring him in because he's a fascinating character.
Yeah, I wish we didn't see him melt down so quickly because we're definitely seeing him melt down now at the end of this, and especially in the light of the way they wrap everything up at the end of this. But I'm ready to watch an actual war. I think it's great. Yeah, no, we're going to declare actual war. And then things will get really silly. He's going to hop into the presidential space shuttle and I'm not going to be here anymore. I'm going to Mars.
President of Mars. Yeah. And by the way, if you want to know my thoughts on episode 7 of season 4 of House of Cards, particularly, go check out the House of Cards podcast at British Tech Network. Jackie Hearn and Roberto Villegas were kind enough to have me on there and talk about that episode. It was really fun.
Right on.
Shall we move on to Justified? Welcome Ibbott back into the fold. We're done yammering.
Okay, I can turn out of my soundproof booth here. All right, good.
Thank goodness.
So Justified episode 3, season 2 has we got more Boyd Crowder. We got a little bit of embarrassing ex-wife, but really there's more Ava in this. This episode was kind of all over the place, really.
Yep, but it hit where it mattered. I realized that this is what I love is seeing Boyd unsure of himself, and I love Boyd trying to be out of the game. I think it's great that after 3 episodes of him going through a period of self-reflection, we see him kind of snap and allow not the Boyd we knew last season, but the Boyd before his religious conversion, when he was just a man who reacted with rage, and we see him drag, the body on down and stuff. I'm in. I don't know where stuff's headed, but I'm in at this point.
Yeah, you mean when the guy jumps on the truck. The 2 people were not quite sure what they're really up to, and he's just not having it. He wants to stay away, wants to be left alone. I think it's actually kind of funny that he's living with Ava and there's just absolutely nothing going on there, as far as either one of them will admit. And Raylan showing up.
I believe it at this point. It's like
I do too.
This version of Boyd might be the kind of person who just is trying to do right. And granted, he tried to do right before in a cartoonish, over-the-top, insane way, and realized how flawed that was. And now he just wants to be. All of a sudden, he's a much more interesting character this season than he was last season.
And it makes sense that after Boyd helped save Ava's life, that she feels some amount of gratitude, so she's willing to set bygones aside and let him stay with her. But she has these strict rules, and that makes sense. I actually wasn't sure if I loved or hated the bit where the guy pretends to be Raylan.
I loved it.
And wears the hat.
I loved it because it was the kind of idiotic thing I believe that character would do. I doubly loved it because he accidentally ended up flushing out the hayseed 2-bit criminal thug sheriff of that, or whatever, because we've already seen crooked cops by this point. But this guy, he even kind of does a clumsy version of like, hey, maybe a man, he talks like Jake and Hagar. He's like, maybe a man makes a mistake. Maybe a man is sloppy in setting stuff up. Maybe another man saves. And Raylan's like, the hell are you talking about?
What's all this stuff about you were saying earlier? Never mind about a man wants you to forget that.
Maybe a man forgot his place. Maybe a man will just be over here.
There was also a really funny bit at the top where Raylan's boss figures out. Well, it was the same kind of situation where Raylan starts saying like, "Look, I know he saw us at the bar and everything, but nothing's going on." And his boss is like, "What are you talking about?" Like, there's a nice little mirror of that.
Yeah. And I also I hope we get to see more. I don't know enough about actual coal miner etiquette or the process of coal mining or what that.
Well, why not, Brian?
That culture.
Go take a little interest in your fellow man.
I would they could continue to sell me more of that world, and I'll keep on buying. I love the idea, like just seeing the idea, like it's a dry county, so whatever bar they're in is definitely a bootleg off the record bar. That that these are people who work hard, spend their money fast, and die young, and I don't know. I'm buying all of it.
Yeah, I remember really liking it. It's been a while since I've seen this episode, but I do really remember liking that episode, or liking the scene with the two of them having the kind of heart-to-heart in that bar, where it was, I don't know, it was just a really cool. Anytime you get those two, we get Oliphant and Boyd Crowder together in just one of those talking scenes. It's always really, really good.
Yeah, I still adore the dialogue here, and I'm with you, Brian. The showing all of our coal mining scenes usually date from the early 20th century or late 19th century, and it's a bunch of people in funny clothes and old-timey hats, and it is interesting to see, like, no, we still have coal miners, and they dress modern and they go to modern places, but this is what their life's like. I find that fascinating as well.
I would say the only misstep in that entire episode was when they robbed the Oxy bus, and they're all like, "Yeehaw, we're rednecks, therefore we love OxyContin. You've heard that on the news. Yeehaw!" That felt a bit cartoony to me.
I don't remember them saying that. Well, they were robbing a bus full of other criminals. I guess they didn't figure they'd had to worry too much.
Oh, it was Oxy. It was just.
I know it was the Oxy bus. I get that.
Right. I don't know. It's just.
Are you saying it's stereotyping rednecks as using OxyContin?
A little bit.
But it's also true that there are such things as Oxy buses.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But I don't believe. Okay, I believe that rednecks will say yeehaw. I believe that rednecks will use Oxy. I believe that rednecks will rob each other. I don't believe all three things happen in the same 30-second stretch. Yeehaw!
It's the same thing we're talking about House of Cards. Like, sure, a couple of those things happen to real people, but not all of them at once. I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Yeah, no, it's a good show.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I felt like that scene was not justified.
No, you win this round, Brushwood. Well, that is it for It's Spoilerin Time. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Glad you guys are enjoying watching these shows along with us. We have a blast watching them as well. I watched this one on my Roku before my internet went out. I was about to say, this is how I watched Justified, but I'd already watched it. So it was all good. Brian Ibbott, thanks for hanging out with us. Where can people find more of you?
Over at coverville.com. You can also find me at frogpants.com/TMS, the morning stream. podcast we've been doing for 5 years now. Crazy. Also over at FilmSack, if you're into really crappy movies on Netflix. And of course, follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Coverville.
Thanks everybody for watching. We'll spoil you next time.
Bye-bye.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.